Okay, go ahead.
It will be, this webinar will be available to you on the website. So this is the agenda. We'll go over what are smart hardware rules, smart labor charges, adding or removing charges based upon design, demonstrating rules in action. So if you see anything here that maybe already sparks a question, be sure to write it down or write it in the chat as we're going along, and then Frank will stop throughout the webinar to ask for questions. So make sure you have those questions ready, and so that we can best meet all your needs. All right, go ahead, Frank.
All right, now we talked about smart CNC rules before, and if you remember, smart CNC rules are designed to place machining automatically based upon design. So once you have those smart CNC rules done, theoretically you should not have to worry about the machining, because that machining should all occur, or it should all occur automatically based upon what part is going into what part, and that's based upon your design. Now, smart hardware rules are almost identical, except that instead of machining, we're talking about adding or deleting hardware as you design. Once the smart hardware rules are set up, then what you don't have to worry about getting nickel and dime to death, because the program will automatically add hardware when it's appropriate, and it'll delete hardware when it's appropriate. Now, the cool thing about this is that we call them smart hardware rules, but it's far more than that, because the example that I've given some of you already has to do with, let's say, shelf pin holes or door bumpers. Usually we just throw in a bunch of door bumpers and hope that we're not losing too much. But every time we add any type of material or any type of an item whatsoever to a bid or for a customer without charging, we're losing money. It's just that simple. And if we charge too much because we're just guessing what the charge should be, then we can lose the bid altogether or get somebody upset. So these smart hardware rules, I will refer to them as hardware rules, but you can utilize them for non-hardware items like what I just said. You can also utilize them for labor charges. For example, well, let's go ahead and make some examples. And by the way, I'm going to be working with one particular setup, but keep in mind that you can have several setups, just like you can have several construction setups, you can have several CNC setups, you can have several edge banding setups. Well, so too can you have several smart hardware rule setups. So let's make some examples. The first thing that has to occur if you're going to be utilizing smart hardware rules is that the item that you are going to be adding or deleting while you're designing has to be in the hardware library, the hardware inventory. Now, as you use these rules, if you find that that's kind of limiting and you want them in any particular library, let me know. We can make changes, because some of these don't even make sense to be in a hardware library, except that they have to be there in order to be utilized by these smart rules. So let's go ahead and go to setup and material and hardware and our hardware inventory. Now remember, you see several inventories here: panel inventory, panel lumber inventory, hardware, edge banding, surface laminate, etc. Actually, those are just segments of one gigantic inventory library. There's just one huge database, and that database, what we do here is just divide it up so you can just look at only your panels, or only your hardware, or only your edge banding inside of that. So if I go to total inventory here, we are looking at the entire inventory database or library. And if we look at just the hardware part of this, we'll see that we have a few. Here's door bumpers, it's already in here. And also hinges, drawer guides, pulls, shelf clips. Now, under no circumstances, well, I can't think of any circumstances. Let me rephrase that. Under virtually no circumstances should you put hinges, drawer guides, or pulls in the smart hardware rule setup. I'll show you that in a minute, and I'll tell you why. First, I'm going to add a new item here, and what I'm going to add is labor. Let's say $10, 10-labor, or how about labor-10? This you can organize this any way you want, but this is just one possibility. So it's hardware and square footage, who cares? Purchasing unit, labor or charge, and price per charge, let's say $10. And we cancel the rest of this, because this is just a labor charge. That's all it is. And it's a $10 labor charge. If I exit out of here, you'll see that we have labor 10, and it's $10. Okay, well, I'm going to put another labor charge in there. Oh, puke. Hold on. Make a new one, and we're going to call that one labor-50. And that's just to let me know that that labor charge is $50. And it's in the hardware category, again, just because that's the way the program has evolved. But there's nothing that says that we can't change that and put it somewhere else. Hardware, maybe throughout the entire library. The only reason why we don't have it throughout the entire library is because we'd have to search through a large library every time we want to add or delete hardware, as opposed to searching through a smaller number of items. So basic unit, again, what I put before, charge, and the purchase, or maybe I did just the opposite. Well, price per charge, $50. And you can play with this so it comes out more to your liking. I'm just adding this very quickly because I want a $50 charge here. So now we have labor 10, labor 50, and you can, I have been on some people's computers and they have made extensive use of these smart hardware rules. And so they have quite a few different items in here that really have almost nothing to do with hardware. Most of the items do, but some of them do not. Now I'm going to add one more. And this one is going to be a Lazy Susan. And it's a piece of hardware, whatever this is going to be. Price, let's say $150. Some of you are laughing, I can tell. All right, so whether you have these numbers in here or not, it doesn't really matter because they're not going to be used anyway, not for what I'm about to show you. So we now have a Lazy Susan, And that Lazy Susan is 150, it's just a solid $150, one time or a flat charge. Now, let's go to the smart hardware rules. So what I just did was I added some items to our inventory, to the hardware section of our inventory. So now when we go into setup, you can get there two different ways, by the way. One way is material and hardware, and right here is smart hardware rules. Another way is through bidding and smart hardware rules. They both take you to the same place. Now, notice that this one is called Smart Hardware Rules for Bloom Tandem Hardware Setup. But one of the cool things about this is that what I'm about to show you is but one setup. For one job, you can have one setup. Another job, you can have a different setup with different hardware rules. As an example, let's say for one particular method of construction, you use toe kicks and you use integrated toe kicks as part of the cabinet. For another job, you use separate toe kicks, but that separate toe kick is a ladder style looking structure that the cabinets sit on. A third method might be where you use those adjustable legs, and that's a piece of hardware. So based upon a particular job, you can pull in one set of hardware rules that incorporates what I just mentioned, and for a different job, bring in a different set of hardware rules that's appropriate for that kind of a job that you're making. So in the example I gave, on one hardware, on one job, we're using adjustable legs. Well, let's just go ahead and do it. Let me get out of here, and I'm going to go back into setup, go back into material and hardware again. And I'm going to add adjustable legs, new hardware, and this is going to be adjustable toe legs. Now, some of you are, in fact, one of you is from Australia, and I apologize, but the toe is what you guys refer to as a kickboard. You don't call those toe kicks. You call those kickboards. And in your language, in your English language, you would put kickboard here instead. At any rate, adjustable toe length, toe legs, and this is going to be one of them. Basic unit, leg, purchasing unit. Well, let's say we buy them by the package. And as an example, let's pretend that this costs, I'm just going to put $100 in here. Why? Because let's say there's 10 in a package. I don't know why. That's just a made up value, okay? So the basic unit is a leg. We buy them as a package. Price for a package is 100, and number of legs in a package is 10. So each one costs $10. How do we make this a little bit more complicated? How about $111? So now we have a Lazy Susan that we added. We have two pieces of labor, two different categories of labor, and adjustable toe legs at $11.10 per leg. Now, I'm going to exit out of here, go back into setup, material, and smart hardware rules. You know, I'm seeing an enhancement that we might want to have right here now, and that is while you're in here, it'd be nice to have a little button that just says inventory, so you can add it directly without having to leave the screen. But anyway, so let's go ahead and create some rules. I'm going to say that for 45-degree corner base unit, under all conditions, you can give width, height, depth limiting factors. So for cabinets only so wide, or because you can have different Lazy Susans being used for different width cabinets. Well, maybe not. That's maybe a bad example. But you can just know that you can have the width and the height and the depth be restricting factors for this particular rule, so that it'll only come about if the width is within this range. Now, if you put zeros there, it's ignored. Same thing with opening width, opening height, and drawer width or height. That's the drawer box it's referring to, and pull out box, if there is a box there. At any rate, for a 45-degree corner unit, I'm just going to make it easy and say under all conditions, we're going to put a Lazy Susan in. And multiplier standard. And we want a quantity only. Quantity multiplier is just 1. So here, whenever we make a Lazy Susan, ever, in this with, as long as we have the setup in there, we're going to be getting a Lazy Susan to be put in whenever we make a 45-degree corner basic unit. Let's make another rule. We have this little plus sign down here. This is organized and it looks similar to what the CNC rules look like. So another one is we're going to say that that 45-degree corner base unit has some more difficulties added to it. And you can get very specific here, but I'm going to be somewhat general and just say for that same cabinet, when I build it, I just want to add $50. And just one time, and that's it. Now I want to add these adjustable toe legs. So I'm going to add another rule, and this time I'm going to say all base and tall cabinets, I want to put adjustable toe legs on. And see here, you could tell it your width. Let's say, for example, on a width of a cabinet from whatever, 10 inches up to, let's say 30 inches or 35 inches, you might have 4 legs. But if you go larger, wider than that, you might want more legs. So that's where these cabinet width, that's where the cabinet width would come into play. And so I want 4 toe legs every time I make a cabinet. And when I make a cabinet, I want 4 of those little guys. So now we have 5 rules. Let's look at them. Here, rule number 1, we have 45-degree corner cabinet. Under all conditions, we want a Lazy Susan. How many do we want? We want 1. By the way, before I explain those, let me explain these 2 categories here where it says item quantity times multiplier. If I use one of these, such as doors, number of doors, notice I want 2 per door. If I have item quantity and quantity multiplier checked, like I do here, or selected, I should say, then if I have 10 doors, it's going to be 10 doors times 2 to give me 20 of whatever category that I'm looking at, or whatever inventory item I'm looking at. If I use this one instead, I can have 5,000 doors here, but I'm still only going to get 2 of the inventory item. That's the difference between these. Most of the time, this one's used. This came later when someone suggested that, you know, they just need a certain quantity no matter how many of a particular item they happen to have. All right, so let's go back to it. Let's go to number 1 and look at number 1. We have a 45 corner base unit. Under all conditions, we're going to get a lazy Susan, and we just want 1, period. Now, that's per base cabinet or per lazy corner cabinet. If we have, even though we have this one checked, use quantity multiplier only, if we have 3 45-degree corner base units, we're still going to get 3 or 1 per cabinet, or a total of 3 lazy Susans, even if we have this checked. This has to do with the quantity within a cabinet. So number 2, I'm going to ask for questions after I go through these 5, okay? So if you have any questions, get them ready. Number 2 is for all cabinet types, under all conditions, we want door bumpers. How many? Well, every time we make a door. And how many do we want per door? 2. So it's item quantity times the quantity multiplier, which is 2 times however many doors we have. Next is number 3. We have the same exact thing under all cabinet types, under all conditions, or for all cabinet types, under all conditions, we want door bumpers again. Notice I didn't say drawer fronts. I said drawer boxes, because drawer fronts, you can have a false front on a sink unit that does not pull out. You don't want a door bumper on that little guy, but you do want door bumpers every time you're making a drawer box, because that drawer box is a drawer that pulls out. And so we want 2 per drawer box. The next one, number 4, labor 50 for a 45 base. See, notice I can go from all cabinet types, all base cabinets, all wall cabinets, all cabinet types in general, or a specific cabinet. Then these are all coming from our library. So for a 45-degree corner base unit, under all conditions, we want to add $50 and just $50, period. And the last one, number 5, is for all base and tall cabinets under all conditions, we want adjustable toe legs. And how many? 4 per cabinet. All right, I think I'll stop here and ask if anybody has any questions. Okay, now don't everybody raise your hand at the same time. One at a time, please.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say again?
Raise your hand this way, or?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yes, sir, Mr. Thomas.
Am I on?
Yep, smile.
Does the number of shelves affect that also?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm going to add another one.
Lazy Susan.
Rule number 6. What's that? And I'm going to say for all cabinets, because whether it's a base cabinet or a tall cabinet, or
You ask him about.
it doesn't matter, I want shelf clips for the number of adjustable shelves. And I want 4 of them. But see, if I just said use quantity multiplier only, I could have 10 adjustable shelves and I'll still only get 4. So we want the item quantity times the multiplier. So now it's 4 times the number of adjustable shelves. Okay? Does that answer your question, Thomas?
Tell me back on.
Go ahead.
Say again?
If you do 1 lazy Susan in the cabinet, then that's going to be your 50 dollar price increase or whatever, but if you do 2 shelves, you got you've got a multiple there. Does that 50 count for that Lazy Susan too?
Those are two separate rules. That $50 that we said that's in rule number, wherever it is, 3 or 4, that rule, let's go back to it. This rule right here is going to give you $50 period whenever you make a 45-degree corner base unit, whether you have any adjustable shelves in it or not.
So if you do 2 shelves.
So if you put adjustable shelves in a particular cabinet, those are two separate kinds of cabinets. You put a, I get what you're doing. You're saying that sometimes you're going to make a 45-degree corner cabinet and it's going to be a Lazy Susan, and other times you're going to have shelves in there, right? Here's how we solve that problem. I'm going to exit out of here, go to cabinet library. Eventually. Here's our 45-degree corner cabinet. And I'm going to accept that cabinet into the library. I think.
Like a bunch of cats watching that mouse.
Okay, I'm going to get here. If I expand this, here's this corner cabinet. Now, excuse me, that's a corner cabinet, and it also, I'll bet you has shelves in it. Yep, it has one shelf, and it has a pull-out. Let's make it an adjustable shelf. Excuse me. Now, if I put an adjustable shelf in there, watch what happens. If I look at the hardware right now, this is messed up because we have a Lazy Susan, $150. We have door bumpers for the drawers, for the doors, $50 upcharge for the Lazy Susan. Oh, no, excuse me, $50 upcharge for making the cabinet. But we have a Lazy Susan in there, and we have our adjustable toe legs, and we also have shelf clips for adjustable shelves. We have 4 of them because we have one adjustable shelf. But now we have shelf clips in a Lazy Susan. That makes no sense whatsoever. So, is this your question, Thomas?
Yeah, it answers it, Frank.
Okay, well, here, I haven't answered it yet. Hold on. So I'm going to save this cabinet as a new prototype. I'm just going to call it 45-degree. How about Lazy Susan? So I know what it is. The same cabinet, except for the fact that I'm going to take the shelves out. If I take those shelves out of that cabinet and now I check the hardware, you'll see that it happens immediately. It has adjustable shelf legs, door bumpers, but notice the Lazy Susan's not there. And the reason is because that Lazy Susan is assigned to that corner cabinet, which I changed the name of. Now, so the answer to your question is this, that if you have some corner cabinets with shelves in them, you have one library item. And we'll choose this one to be the one with the shelves in it. And the other cabinet that is a 45-degree Lazy Susan, whoops, got them wrong. This Lazy Susan right here does not have any shelves in it. So let's go ahead and reset it up. To answer your question, basically, we just make 2 library cabinets, one with shelves, one without shelves. So now when we go back into the setup of the hardware, Here's that corner base unit with a lazy Susan, but we don't want to use that anymore. We want to use the 45-degree lazy Susan. So that 45-degree, which is the same cabinet. I just took the shelves out of it, that's all. So that cabinet will have a lazy Susan in it, not the one that I had originally. So now we have one. All cabinet types will have door bumpers. Here's that $50 labor charge. Remember, we put it for the 45-degree corner base unit. We might still want it there, but we might also want it on this 45-degree lazy Susan. So I can add a new rule, and it copies that rule and simply add it to that lazy Susan as well. We'll go on to another one. All base and tall cabinets, adjustable toe legs, that's fine. All cabinet types will get shelf clips if they have adjustable shelves, and they'll get 4 of them. So now if we go back and look at, oh, before I go any further, notice the yellow message below. I don't think anybody reads that because many times we get tech support tickets telling us that they have more drawer guides or door hinges or drawer pulls than they're supposed to have. The reason is because they put them here as well as the automatic function in those 3 areas that I'll show you momentarily. In the setup, in the CNC setup, whoops, excuse me, the door and drawer construction methods, notice we have 3 different areas. Drawer guides, where it explains where or which drawer guides we're going to be adding to the job. We have pulls, which describe the pulls that are going to be added to the job, and door hinges, which describe the door hinges that are going to be added to the job. This is under normal circumstances. So when you add smart rules on top of these, you're doubling them. So generally, you don't add drawer guides, pulls, or hinges to the smart CNC rule, the smart hardware rules, unless there's another part of one of those categories that you want to add that's not part of these 3 areas that I just showed you. So if it's a more complicated guide, for example, that requires screws, let's say screws don't come with, I've got one customer who buys guides in bulk, and they don't have any screws at all, period. The screws come separate. Well, you might have to, in that case, having the drawer guide be taken care of here and the screws being cared for over at the Smart Hardware Rules would make sense. Now, if we look at these cabinets, all these cabinets in here, so we already have 19 cabinets here, but every single one of them is already taken care of. Watch this. If I take this base cabinet and look at the hardware that's assigned to that base cabinet, you'll see that it's already there. Those smart hardware rules will apply immediately to any job that you already have in memory or that you bring into memory, or excuse me, that you load into the program. So if I look at a different one, get this thing out of here. If I look at a different one, let's say a drawer bank, and I look at the hardware for that 4-drawer drawer bank. Oh, you idiot. That was, I clicked the material button. The little wrench is a hardware button. So here we have door bumpers. We have a bunch of them. We have a total of 8. And this also tells us where the source is of the rules, because you can also add specific hardware to these cabinets directly. That's why the source is there, because sometimes it's manual addition, but other times it's a smart hardware rule addition. So we have those adjustable toe legs and the door guides and, excuse me, the drawer guides, the pulls. And if we had hinges, if we had a door here and we had hinges, those were already taken care of. Okay, any questions? Okay. If there are no questions, let's look to see if we've missed anything here. I'm going to go back to setup, bidding and pricing, smart hardware rules. Now, in some of these areas, you're going to have to experiment. Maybe I should put that in red. People would actually read it, you think. Here, if we add another rule and we want 2 more legs, 2 more for any cabinet, no, for any base cabinet, excuse me. For any base cabinet, and tall, may as well include tall cabinets, even though you're not usually going to get a super wide tall cabinet, but you could. This is custom cabinetry, who knows? And we're going to make the condition, we're going to make it conditional on the cabinet width. So if we have a width somewhere between, let's say, 36 degrees, excuse me, inches, and 40 and 100 inches. On we don't want Lady Susan there, but we do want adjustable toe legs, and we want 2 more. For the middle. We already have 4. Remember, on our other rule, we already had 4 for any cabinet. And now for our larger cabinets, maybe 36 is not large enough, or maybe it's still too narrow. How about 48 inches? From 48 inches to 100 inches, we're going to get 2 more legs. Now let's see how that works. This is called conditional assignment, because instead of saying all conditions, we are conditioning the placement or the inclusion of these adjustable toe legs based upon the cabinet width between these 2 numbers. So let's see how that translates into the real world. Here's a 42-inch cabinet. Now, according to our rules, we should have a total of 4 adjustable legs to it. And here's our one rule, 4 adjustable legs, and record number 44. Now, why is the record number so large, yet we only have about 7 rules? Remember, the record that this is pointing to is not of the record itself, of not the rule itself, but rather where that leg is coming from. That's why the door bumpers are both 37 and 37, because it's inventory record number 37 or inventory record number 44. And even though you might only have 10 or 15 hardware items like we have right now in hardware, in the hardware part of the inventory database, remember that database is much larger, and the record itself in the database is what is showing here. That way, if we wanted to adjust something, we can go right to that particular record. Anyway, so for that relatively narrow cabinet, we have 4 legs. What if we change the width of this thing to say 50 inches? Now, if we look at our hardware again, now we have 4, which we had a minute ago, but now because we're over 48 inches, we're in between 48 and 100, we're being given 2 more legs because of that width condition. Now, your imagination can make those rules really, really fly for you, because what you're looking at, these smart hardware rules, well, these aren't the hardware rules, this is a result of the hardware rules. But what you're looking at is a way in which all of your hardware and even non-hardware items, such as door bumpers and dollar signs, even that can be changed and made to be perfect for your pricing at a time when you have some quiet time, at nighttime, in the morning, or whenever, when you don't have craziness happening in the shop. What if you want to add more money for when you make a large cabinet, just for installation purposes? You could do that as well. Or you can go back into your setup, into material, go into your smart hardware rules again, make a new rule, and say that for all base cabinets, as an example, for all base cabinets, I'm going to make, you see, I'm telling it by width and by depth. Excuse me, and or by depth. But you have one rule by width, another rule by depth. So I'm going to say when I make a really long cabinet, I want to add $50 to it. But see, you can have several different labor charges. I just put 2 of them in there. So if I make a cabinet somewhere between, I'll use that same example, although it could be very different. 48, what did I say, 48 to 100? I want to add $50. Now I'm going to add another rule by height. If somebody wants me to make a higher cabinet than normal, or even a shorter cabinet, people don't, your customers many times don't understand that it might cost you more money to make a smaller cabinet, one that's not as high as your standards, than it does your standard height cabinet. So you can you have a different height, just put the height in here, whether it's smaller, less than the amount that you're using for standards, or greater than. So if I put a cabinet in here that is, the minimum height would be, let's say, 30 inches to, no, how about 20 inches to 30, just for the heck of it. Normally, our base cabinets are about 34.5 inches, but let's say somebody asks you to make a cabinet that's less. Well, you can have a different labor charge, or a different kind of charge altogether. It doesn't have to be called labor. It could be called a customization charge, or whatever. You can get pretty creative about how you want to organize this. But let's see how that works now, because now we have a height charge between 20 and 30 inches, and a width charge between 48 and 100 on a particular cabinet. All base cabinets. So if I go back to that same cabinet, where the heck is it? Here, there's that B50 cabinet. If I look at the hardware, we'll see that not only do we have adjustable toe legs now, and 2 additional ones, but we also have this $50 charge. Now notice I haven't done anything with the height. If I change that height to be within my height conditions, what did I say, between 20 and 30? So let's say 28 inches. That's going to be a pain in the neck to make in some cases, and because it's not going to fit perfectly on our panels that we normally use. But if I look at the hardware now, you'll see that we have an additional labor charge. And $50 per, see, I've got $50 per charge. That charge can be named something other than just charge. It can be named per custom charge, for example, or per customization. But you'll notice, but the thing to notice here is that when you make a change in smart hardware rules, it changes literally thousands of cabinets, theoretically, all at the same time. And so when you go to reports and you generate on all these cabinets, your bidding report or your cutlass report will also have these smart rules on them, by the way. That's Oregon. Here we go. For our hardware costs, well, it's locking me up here. Are you guys locked up? See, these are the guides, pulls, and hinges that I was talking about earlier that come out automatically.
Frank, the screen is still frozen.
I'm frozen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I think it's going again.
There we go. Okay, so on our report here, you'll see here's hardware, additional hardware, door bumpers.
Frank, I still don't see it. It's still froze. As soon as you go to the report screen.
Okay, well, take my word for it. This is on the invoice and on the bid. So try it yourself, and then test it out and see what you think. Any questions before we close? Okay, guys, I guess that's it. We'll give some feedback on the forum or on the Facebook page as far as what you want to see next time. And until then, Valerie?
Does anyone have any topic suggestions for next week's webinar? So let's see, we've covered smart CNC, smart hardware.
I have a suggestion that I wouldn't mind seeing. If we were to cover the steps of setting up drilling, machining operations that are dedicated to certain pieces of hardware. For example, when you do have a corner cabinet with a Lazy Susan, you always got hardware to mount on top and bottom. How to set those drilling operations up in the quickest way, as well as a lot of waste bins and other pullouts that maybe side mount inside of cabinets and so forth. If we could set those up as well. I have been doing those all just with CNC definitions dedicated to a certain cabinet name. And I suspect there probably is better, quicker ways to do that. I'm sure Frank can enlighten me on that.
Yeah, and not only that, but on this part right here, Steve, on those smart hardware rules again,
Mm-hmm.
you can't see them because I've got them hidden. But there's another column here. See, there's 4 columns here. There's a 5th column that refers to the CNC machining per material, per hardware. So not only can we do what you're suggesting as far as go step by step as far as the necessary machining, if it's necessary per hardware item, but we can have that automatically attached along with these rules.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I would be looking for. And then you can assign hardware to any cabinet from the cabinet editor stream. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, eh?
Yeah. Just because I'm Canadian, eh? Yeah, but we're also friendly. Don't worry.
Steve is Canadian, so we have to speak Canadian sometimes, eh?
And the rest of you guys want to be Canadian, so it's all right.
But yeah, that's kind of yeah, put that down as a recommendation, Steve, because I'll forget it in about 3
Yeah,
minutes.
Valerie, you got that? Perfect.
So drilling, machining operations?
Yeah,
Is that-
and adding hardware from the cabinet editor screen.
Okay.
All right, now.
Alright.
Okay, well then we'll see you guys next week.
Oh, and just to clarify, I'm not from Quebec, so I'm from the best of the Canadians. Don't worry.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I'm not from Quebec, so it's all good.
Oh,
Oh, where's the best part of Canada?
No.
it's not Quebec.
Oh, okay.
Must be Ontario.
Ah.
No, where are you, Steve? Steve, where are you?
Oh, we're in Manitoba. I'm like just above North Dakota. We're about 4 miles into Canada, above North Dakota.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, well, if we don't have any other topic suggestions, I think we're good for next week.
Okay, well, you guys have a good week.
Okay.
Later.
All
Bye.
right, now do I
Bye-bye.
end this, Valerie, or do I stop recording?
Stop recording.
Yeah, end the meeting.
Okay, good. This to match this, basically. Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so yeah, I think it matches something else downstairs that he has actually. It's really just like this song. Sure, we're gonna stick with
All
that.
right, where the hell is the recording?
You gotta end, you can end the meeting. I think it'll stop the recording.
Oh, really?
Yes, it will.
Down at the bottom right.
Okay, end meeting for all.